Hey guys, it's Kevin with Murphy, guys. It's going to be another installment of Own It or Falking Seen It, and of course, for this week, the big movie coming out is none other than Pacific Rim Uprising, so why not finally watch the original Pacific Rim? And what Pacific Rim is essentially about is basically years from now in the future, there are these creatures called the kaiju. They are these just very terrifying monsters who can like gobble up cities, things like that. You know, Earth is at the brink of destruction, but luckily there is some sort of way to neutralize it, and that are these mankind giant robots known as these Jaegers. And basically, in the midst of all of this is our main character, named Rally. He is someone who his brother, was, personally, he is grieving the loss of his brother, and he used to be a Jaeger pilot, but he has since retired, but he is pulled out of retirement, by Idris Elba's character, and basically from there, he has to make a choice of if he really, is able to stop this war, and basically that's all I'm gonna say. So Pacific Rim in general, I was looking forward to this movie. I remember when the trailers came out and everyone said this just looked like the definition of a popcorn summer movie, and that's really all I wanted to be. I just wanted to be a fun movie with maybe some good stakes, maybe some well-realized characters, and I remember when it came out, everyone was praising it as such, but I never got the chance to watch it. I actually have a funny story about that for you guys. Remember, I went with a friend. We were going to see Pacific Rim, but we didn't end up seeing it because it wasn't at a convenient time. We saw Grown Ups 2 instead, so that just tells you the amazing life choices I made back then. Needless to say, that I very much do regret that. I really wish I did see Pacific Rim in theaters, and after finally watching it, I will say Pacific Rim is not by any means a great movie, but it is an enjoyable one overall, despite a lot of problems, and we're going to answer right now, starting off with the cast. So, the cast in this movie, I'm very up and down with. There are some actors here that I really do like, but some that are just not really utilized well at all. And unfortunately, that is exactly what I have to say about our main star here, Charlie Hunnam, who he as an actor is very hit or miss for me. When he's good, he's really great. Something like The Lost City of Z or Sons of Anarchy, when he's just giving it his all and pouring so much passion into a performance, and he really does a great job. There are those times, though, where I feel he really does overact, and it just doesn't really feel like, he is that great, and that is exactly, sadly, what I have to say about him in this role. I don't think Hunnam is necessarily terrible here. Just in general, he feels very miscasted. This is a character who I feel, requires a lot of emotion out of someone, and just a lot of passion, and it just didn't seem like Hunnam was really willing to go there. It always felt like he was holding back, and again, I don't think he is at all a bad actor, but I just don't think he's right for this role. Just something about it, it just did not seem like he was fully into it, and I really needed him to emote more, but he just never did, and because of that, I don't think that he really pulled off the role in the way they want him to, and for me, I think in general, he was just very miscasted here, and we'll get to his character a little bit later, but in general, I really did not think he was that great. Who I did really like, though, was Idris Elba, as the character of General Pentecost, who, in all honesty, I think probably should have been, the main character here. He is really great in this film. He's someone who, he is doing literally whatever he can to see this war end. You can tell that he's very frustrated, but he's also very determined, and he's very rootable in that sense. I really did like when I ended up taking his character. He does a really great job, and even in scenes when the film isn't really working, which we'll get into in a little bit, he still really does shine. I think he did a really great job here. But someone I also really want to point out is Rinko Kikuchi as the character of Mako. I really did like her in this movie. She did a really great job here. She to me felt like the most utilized character, and she really does pull it off. I'd say there's a lot of stuff that she does go through in this film, and I think overall she did a really great job. And I definitely really liked what we got from her. The chemistry between her and Hunnam is kind of forced, but she does make it work for the most part. And I think overall she did do a really great job. And then everyone else here I thought actually was pretty good. Charlie Day, this is a role that really could have been pretty bad, but because Day is such a talented actor, he actually does make it work. I thought he actually was a lot of fun in this film. You know, he's this scientist who's just very determined to, find out the kaiju, find their weakness, find what they can to take them down. I thought he definitely was really great. I also really love Ron Perlman in this film. He also was really great. Some of the best scenes in this movie are just those two talking. I thought he did a really great job as well. Max Martini, I really did not like as a character of Herc. We'll get to his character later, but I really was not a fan of him. He was just very one-note and very annoying, and I really did not like him at all. Everyone else here I think is pretty good. No one really gave a bad performance, and I think that's really all I gotta say in terms of the acting. But now let's get to what I really want to talk about, which is the directing and the writing, which there are quite a few problems with this film, but Del Toro's directing is definitely not one of them. I think his directing for this movie is very much the right tone, because this isn't a very complex movie. He's trying to make this more of a action film, and he does a very good job with that. You do feel the weight of what's going on, but you also do get a lot of fun in those action scenes, and I think his directing was actually pretty good here. What surprised me even more, though, was the comedy. The comedy, for the most part, in my opinion, works really well. I was laughing quite a lot more than I expected to, and I think that the tone actually did work. And, it's maybe a few laughs did feel forced, but I do think for the most part, the comedy worked pretty well, hand in hand with the action. That's something I was pretty impressed by. Let's talk about the writing, though, because here's where we get to my problem with the film. Because the action sequences, we'll get to a little bit later. Unfortunately, as good and as fun as the film is, it doesn't take away from the fact that the story, in my opinion, is really lacking here, especially in regards to our main character. This is someone who, in the beginning of the film, we think we're going to get something to connect with, because he loses his brother very early on, and you think that's going to be like his main storyline in the film. Him grieving his brother, him trying to get over it, can he be a Jaeger pilot and not go through the same stuff that his brother did? But the film just never really utilizes it, and that really is my biggest problem when it comes to the writing. All the interesting stuff in this movie, virtually all of it, the film barely focuses on. For example, there's this really cool thing with Mako, where she's able to, through the kaiju, she has this personal loss with the kaiju. Her family was killed because of the kaiju, and she's able to kind of go back and relive some of those events. And we see that there's a relation between her and Idris Elba. Again, it's interesting, but it's just not very utilized well. It's not really brought up as much as I want it to be, and I'm like, oh, that's a really cool idea. I really like what they're doing there. Again, they don't really do anything with it, and I think they could have. I really think they could have done more with that overall. I thought it was honestly a really interesting idea, but again, the film barely chooses to utilize it, and I just was very let down when it came to that. There's also a reveal with Idris Elba very late into the film, and I'm like, oh, that's actually really interesting. Maybe they're actually going to take this somewhere, and they just didn't. So, yes, there are definitely some cool ideas within this movie. It's just, for me, every cool idea that was in there, the film barely chose to focus on, and that definitely did upset me a little bit. I really did feel that they could have done more of them, but unfortunately, these ideas are just not really in the foreground. Also, as much as I did like Charlie Day in this movie, his whole plotline with Ron Perlman feels like a completely different movie. It really does, and I understand there's got to be a subplot in there. I totally get that, but the whole movie of him finding out more about the kaiju feels like a different movie. It really does. I mean, sure, in the beginning, maybe it feels like it's part of it, but when he goes off of Ron Perlman, the whole thing feels like it's like a spin-off movie or something. It does not feel like it's part of the same movie. And again, while it is interesting overall, a lot of it just feels like a completely different movie, and it just didn't connect, and I think the way it wanted it to, and that really didn't work for me at all, I have to say. I also really could not stand, our main villain here. Our main villain here is so I mean, I guess he's supposed to be unlikable, but he's just so annoying. He's upset because he was the main Jaeger pilot, and now he's jealous of, Raleigh, and, you know, he rivals him, and it just... The problem is you don't care about either of these characters. You don't care about Raleigh because they don't really give him any sort of interesting arc, and Hunnam isn't really all that great in the role, so it's not like he's elevating the material or anything, and you certainly don't care about Herc because he's just like a whiny little crybaby throughout the film, and because of that, I really did not care about this main conflict. The problem is, that is one of the biggest parts of this movie, is this sort of rivalry that's going down, and I just did not care about either of these characters. And again, this is our main character, Raleigh. I should be rooting for him. You know, when he's in peril, I should be, you know, gripping my seat. I should be so into everything that's going on, but sadly, I'm just not. And what's unfortunate about that is that the action that's in this movie is phenomenal. All of the action set pieces are very well done. It's very fluid, it's very epic, and you really do get that grand scale that you want in this movie. They really did not, you know, let anyone down when it comes to the action sequences. They're all very well done. I thought they were all very well choreographed. The effects are phenomenal. I mean, I really did love all of the action sequences here, particularly one, you know, involving, I mean, there's all kinds of really cool action scenes throughout this movie. I can't think of one that stood out to me, but I thought they were all very well done, and I was definitely entertained when those scenes were on. Unfortunately, this just feels like one of those movies at points where it feels like they're just trying to get to the next action scene. And I get it. That is the main thing that people are going to go to this movie for. For me, I just need a little bit more than that. I really do. I need characters to connect to. I need a story that really does hook me in. And while I did sort of have that, something felt lost here. Not everything connected in the way I wanted it to. I will say the score I really loved. I thought the score was very memorable, and I really did enjoy it. The editing, like I said, I do feel the movie is a bit choppy, especially when it comes to, you know, cutting back to Charlie Day and Ron Perlman. Again, it just feels like a different movie. It has a very different color scheme. It has a very different feel to it. It's a lot more comedic than everything else that's going on. It just does not connect to everything else, and it just felt very disconnected from everything. And I get it that obviously it's about the kaiju. I totally understand that, but it just did not connect to the main story. And if more time was devoted to the main story, I think I would have liked it a lot more. I wanted a lot more, especially from Mako and from Pentercast. And honestly, I wish that was the main relation in the movie, because you don't really get why Pendergast, what he really sees in Raleigh. What does he see in Raleigh that Herc didn't have? You don't really get it, because there just isn't much to latch onto with Raleigh in general. So because of that, you're like, what do you see in this guy? Like, what is it about him that you want to appoint him for this position? It just does not make a lot of sense, and a lot of that weight you're supposed to feel is just kind of lost here, and I really did want more. So like I said, Pacific Rim, it is a fun movie at times. I think there's some really good action sequences here. I do think there are some very solid performances, and there are some interesting ideas in there. It's just the film never really focused on the stuff that I wanted it to. There are some attempts at deepening the story and giving these characters some more layers, but it just felt like this film was more concerned about getting to the next action scene, and while those action scenes are very well done, I just really wanted more in terms of characters, and this film did not really give it to me. So for that reason, I am going to give Pacific Rim a C+. It is enjoyably okay. What I mean by that is that you can watch this film and you're not going to be upset by it, and it definitely is entertaining. It's just nothing that I really would revisit. When I revisit this film, I'm going to go back to the action scenes and things like that. I'm not going to watch it as a whole, because in general, besides the action scenes, what we have here is a very mediocre film that I think could have been a lot better overall, and I do think honestly is a little bit overrated because of that. But oh, guys, my review of Pacific Rim. Let me know what you guys thought overall. Left your thoughts. And I will be posting my review for Pacific Rim Uprising tomorrow. Definitely interested in seeing how that one does turn out. Once again, guys, I will not be doing the thing where I randomly choose a movie. I was planning on doing that, but as you guys know, this week, TCM actually released the film Vertigo in many theaters, and I wanted to go see it, but I didn't. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just do our Falking scene on it. So next week, the film I'll be reviewing is in fact Vertigo. I am very excited to watch that one. We'll have to see the way that one does turn out. But that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoy. See you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.